Many civilizations have stories of a great flood that influenced their peoples. My own encounter with the flood was through the biblical story and its hero Noah. I think of him as an ordinary man who was given an extraordinary task, which was to save his family so that they might go on to spread across the world. The Bible tells us that Noah was instructed by God to build an ark capable of taking his family and all the animals through the flood to what was to become a new beginning. Simply reading the biblical account of the task and equating this to all the animals we know of in the world today, while also considering that Noah believed the whole of the earth was covered by the flood, has led most people to dismiss the story as impossible to believe, and so it is rejected without further serious thought. I puzzled over this for many years, all the time feeling that perhaps it did happen. Why would its authors have written such an unbelievable story in the first place? This anomaly led me to think, what if the ark did not have to carry all the animals we know of in the world today? Perhaps he only had to save the animals that existed where he lived. For the purpose of my hypothesis, I call that place Eden. If that were true, then, the ark can shrink to manageable proportions. Another aspect of the story concerns the great sign given to Noah by God as a pledge that he would never again destroy mankind by water. This great sign we believe to be the rainbow. For many years I struggled with the problem as to why the rainbow was a new sight to Noah. Surely water existed and rain and the sun, so why had he never seen it before landing at Mount Ararat? I had hoped to find a clue to dating the flood by finding a moment in time when the internal reflections within water drops changed and so allowed the light to be visible to those on the earth's surface in Eden. Maybe it was the density of the water that changed, or could it simply have been that he lived somewhere in a bowl where his latitude and surroundings were not favourable to seeing the reflected wavelengths which form the rainbow. Also, according to the Bible, the people in Noah's community seem to have been much longer livers than we are today. For instance, his grandfather Methuselah was reputed to be more than 900 years old. Such information, I believe, only served to consign that part of Genesis to the realms of fantasy. However, could it have been their water source which caused such longevity, and which gave rise to the tales of springs of eternal youth which have tantalized mankind for millennia? Be that as it may, I was not up to the task of working out the changes needed to account for the appearance of this new phenomena, the rainbow. If such calculations can be made, then perhaps my original goal to be able to date the biblical flood may yet be realized. What a great achievement that would be. Nowadays we live in marvelous times, when through the medium of our computers and such programs as Google, we are able to make fantastic journeys through time and space. Only great minds like Einstein were able to make mind journeys. Now anyone with a computer can travel out into our universe and have views of our beautiful home which we call Earth, that only poets could have imagined. If you feel that perhaps my theory of a small ark may be worth considering, then please join me on such a journey. I know there are people who take the biblical version as being just a fairy tale, not to be taken seriously, while there are others who believe it to be the absolute truth, and that any variation from what has come to be taken as the accepted understanding of the story may be offensive to them. For that I unreservedly apologize, while believing that it is better to try and find a reasonable explanation for the event rather than dismissing it as totally implausible. My next step was to find a place on earth where Noah and his family and the other descendants of Adam and Eve may have lived. A deciding factor in this was that it should be near the one definite location mentioned in the story and which is today known as Mount Ararat. I reasoned that they should be living in a place of safety, protected from life forms which would have been dangerous to such relatively frail creatures such as mankind and the animals which he needed for survival, such as cattle and sheep and goats and the like. I came to the conclusion that ideally it should be in a valley surrounded by mountains and containing good land and a plentiful supply of water such as a lake. Looking at the map of the area around Mount Ararat, one place immediately suggests itself, and that is Lake Van. Looking closer at Lake Van, we can see that it seems to meet all the criteria needed for life by relatively frail creatures such as mankind. Could this then have been the place to which Adam and Eve were sent? It certainly looks beautiful and suitable. Remembering that Adam and Eve were sent out from the Garden of Eden and a pillar of fire blocked their way back, how then might I account for this? Well, not far from Lake Van is an area that has oil, and so perhaps a gas flare blocked their way back. It is recorded in the Bible that pitch was used to seal the ark, and this would also mean oil and its byproducts was available to them. What did the ark look like? Well, I imagine it to have been 3 stories high above the waterline. Underneath, it would have consisted of sealed sections to allow it, fully loaded, to float with the main door above the waterline. I don't think it would have had any steering capability, as I believe Noah would have left this to the Lord. This slide shows the lower deck plan, and as you enter through the great main door with an outside ladder to the roof, to its right, there are slatted animal pens in front and to your left. There is a feed chute at the left end wall leading from the store deck above. To your right are pens for fowl and smaller animals. There is also a water access point with a sliding wooden chute which was lowered when water was required from a deeper level, and nearby was a water closet. A stairs then led up to the middle level, that was mainly a store and workshop level, with another stairs led up to the living area at the top of the ark. This upper area had family sleeping quarters, and from this slide you will see that I catered for the 3 named sons and their unnamed wives and children, and also for 3 daughters and their husbands and children. For the sake of the story, I envisage 14 adults and many children. These for the sake of the gene pool. I have given all the characters names, although the Bible does not even name Noah's wife. To some, this may seem to be the ultimate in literary license, but so be it. Having settled on the design needed for the small ark, and feeling that I knew of a reasonable starting point for their great adventure, which was Lake Van, and also knew where they first landed in their new world, which was Mount Ararat, I next wrote the story, Journey to the Beginning of the Rainbow. This slide depicts the early years of their life away from Eden. Their first movement had been northeast from their home to the foothills of Mount Ararat. and finding this place was unsuitable for their purposes, they made explorations east and west, until they came to an area suitable for establishing a place where they could establish a first settlement and, more importantly, sow their grain. This area is shown hatched. As the flood receded, two great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, were formed, or more likely re-emerged, and proved to be suitable highways, shown in green, for leading them down to the area known as the Fertile Crescent, or Mesopotamia, meaning the land between the rivers. In the story, I show in yellow two other directions for exploration toward the Black Sea. In this area, the story suggests that a strong-willed daughter had a disagreement with her brothers, who all went south, and wrote her out of their story, which was the Bible. In my story, I suggest she went north and was responsible for the legend of the Amazons. Others would have gone west and founded Catalhoyuk, the first city, while yet others went east along what was to become the Silk Road. It is generally accepted that the Fertile Crescent was the area between the two rivers where farming first appeared. It is also generally accepted that this area was reached by the descendants of primates who were hunter-gatherers who came from sub-Saharan Africa and who suddenly learned how to become farmers. I find that theory to be completely implausible. The route would have been extremely difficult, and without doubt with very little to either hunt or gather. Why would any rational being leave the lush African land below the Sahara and head into an increasingly hostile land or sea, and then go up two rivers against the current? I find the biblical suggestion that mankind explored the two great rivers moving south by people who were already farmers, and that I find to be a more likely scenario. If there is sufficient interest in either the full version of my small ark theory or in the journey to the beginning of the rainbow story, or both, I will try to have them available.